What's up, investors? It's the Russian dude. Another football jersey. Let me know down below in the comments if you recognize the team or not. But yeah, let's talk about one of the most deranged illusions modern authoritarian regimes are pushing. That military spending is not a black hole for national wealth, but an actual investment in the future. Sounds like something from a parody sketch, right? But no, in today's Putin's Russia, this is the real deal. They say war is good for the economy, as if turning human bodies into statistics, burning multi-million-dollar tanks in the open field and launching drones into maternity hospitals somehow equals long-term prosperity. This is the so-called concept of military Keynesianism, where GDP numbers rise and graves multiply just as fast. But does it really work? That is the question. Lately, the Russian state has been showing off those GDP growth figures like a trophy they found at the bottom of a dumpster. The numbers are up, sure, kinda, but so is the number of amputees, widows, orphans and broken cities. So today, let's discuss how this so-called growth is nothing more than economic cosplay, how war spending in 2025 does not bring innovation but kills it, but how civilian tech is dragging the military forward, not the other way around, and finally, how all this short-term stimulation ensures a long-term collapse. And also for our next Thank God It's Monday podcast, I want you guys to interview me. Please leave your questions down below in the comments. I also made a community post where you also can leave your comments wherever it's easier for you, and I'll try to answer as many of them as possible. All of them will be answered once again on Monday, so if you don't want to miss it, please subscribe to my channel if you haven't done so already. Now let's continue to the video. If you only looked at Russia's economic growth rates, you might think they have stumbled onto some kind of a gold mine, assuming once again you trust the official statistics presented to us by Russians themselves. A country under heavy sanctions, hemorrhaging manpower and diplomatically isolated from half the world, and yet it is somehow mysteriously growing, more than 4% per year in some cases. But let's ask the question no one in a TV studio wants to hear. What kind of growth are we even talking about? I mean, imagine asking this question Slavyov or Simonyan, and let's just hypothetically imagine they know a thing or two about economics. And yeah, I know it's hard, but let's do our best. What will they reply? Judging by our yesterday's video, Slavyov will order my immediate execution in front of my comrades, no more than less, and the question will obviously be just simply ignored. But okay, let's not get carried away too much, so let's get back to the economy. Russia's supposed growth is not Silicon Valley growth. It's not renewable energy, biotech, software development, or next-gen transportation. This is a so-called we built more missiles growth, we hired more cannon fodder type of growth. The factories making this miracle happen are not developing world-changing tech. They are churning out armored plates, drone frames, and mass graves. They have a blueprint, a stock of raw materials, and 2 people working in shifts on each station. And so what, you want to increase the output? Just make the workday longer or hire a 3rd person to make the factory work literally 24/7. This is where this supposed growth comes from. And if you maximize the capacity of one factory, just build another one or repurpose your local car Lada manufacturer to produce now armored personnel carriers, and voila, infinite money glitch in real life. In 2022, when Europe panic bought Russian gas before sanctions kicked in, the Kremlin got a brief influx of money. They took that cash and funneled it into the defense sector. Contracts ballooned. Military producers were drowning in orders. The ruble stabilized. On paper, the economy looked kinda fine, but the paper was soaked in blood. Nobody wants to admit it, but modern Russia's war economy is not just corrupt, it's cannibalistic. It devours any healthy part of the economy still functioning. Tech firms strangled by sanctions, agriculture, lacking equipment and workers, education. Good luck getting a physics teacher when he has just been drafted into, 83rd Regiment. And those desperate men who were willing to do almost anything for $300 per month salary, well, they signed a contract and received $40,000 bonus, assuming it ever reached their pockets, of course. What's booming are the industries of death, not just weapons, but also prosthetics, coffins, and private security firms that vacuum up desperate men like black holes. And even then, it is fake prosperity. Inflation is eating away their salaries. Military men become just above average, and then average people, which are the vast majority of Russians obviously, they now just edge dangerously close to poverty line. The ruble is artificially propped up. Imports are suffocating under sanctions. Try finding a replacement for a broken factory machine now that Siemens and Bosch are gone, and that's it, you simply can't. There are no equivalents in Russia, they cannot produce it yet. And when the Kremlin screams we are doing great, what they really mean is we are spending faster than we are collapsing. What Kremlin tries to tell us is that they are putting to practice the theory of military Keynesianism. But does it really work? Let's try to answer this question in our next chapter. Let's zoom out and talk theory. It's not going to be boring, I promise. Military Keynesianism, the belief that government spending even on weapons can boost the economy. In its most idealistic version, it's a solution for a sluggish economy with underused labor and stagnant industries. Throw money into the system, build roads, hire workers, or if you're feeling aggressive, build tanks. The result? Job creation, innovation, growth. There was a time when this actually made sense. World War II, for example, pulled the US out of the Great Depression. America funded massive research initiatives, invented computers, broke through in aviation, even laid the groundwork for space exploration. But the key detail everyone conveniently forgets about this is that it was not about the tanks. It was about the science behind the tanks. It was about spending on knowledge, not just firepower. Fast forward to 2025 Russia, and there is zero comparison. There is no Manhattan Project, no Apollo program, no Bell Labs full of eccentric geniuses building the internet by pure accident. Today's war economy is not funding basic research. It's not expanding the frontier of knowledge. It is turning resource-starved civilians into uniformed corpses and engineers into glorified mechanics. Just like mentioned previously, the only reason Russia produces more tanks and employs more people is because they need more tanks and need more people to build them. No innovative thinking behind it at all. We need 5 tanks now instead of 2, so just hire more people if you need, but fulfill our government contract. And let's not forget the elephant in the room. Russia is not in post-crisis recovery phase like 1940s America. There is no surplus of unused labor waiting to be employed. The war has drained the workforce. Male population between 20 and 35, a lot of them decimated. Those not dead or wounded are either mobilized in hiding or fled abroad. Smart people, most of them escaped Russia and are not planning to come back, not in the near future at least, not during their most productive years. There is no surplus. The government is not reviving an idle economy. It is milking the very last bits of it. Military Keynesianism depends on productive reinvestment, on long-term gains. You pour money back into the public, and decades later you get iPhones, GPS, nuclear power, space travel, you name it. Russia's war economy has none of that. The drones do not lead into commercial breakthroughs. The radar tech is not being used in driverless cars. The missiles do not get recycled to weather satellites. This is not the same story. This is a fast track to stagnation, and even then, the military sector, which in many cases is the driving force, or at least should be the driving force of the progress, is now becoming obsolete and getting replaced by another sector, the civilian one. Let's talk about it in our next chapter. Remember when war used to push technology forward? Yeah, in Putin's Russia that's pretty much over. Take a look, for example, at military machines they are using. Most of them were developed in the 1980s, and the weapons they use are modifications of the AK, the rifle which was invented in 1947, that's why it's AK-47. The 20th century saw a one-way pipeline, military to civilian. DARPA, for example, birthed the internet, NASA gave us satellite TV, Cold War spending eventually led to laptops, encryption and 3D printing. It was chaotic, expensive and inefficient, people thought that it's a waste of money, but it worked. Well, not anymore, definitely not in Russia. Today that pipeline has reversed. The most revolutionary military innovations in Ukraine and Russia are not coming from labs under military contracts. They are coming from Best Buy and Alibaba. Chinese-made DJI FPV drones, originally marketed for agriculture and filmmaking, are now battlefield kings. Messaging apps like Telegram and Discord are being used for command and control. Starlink then, not military satcoms, is dominating field communication. Civilian industries are not just adapting, they are outperforming billion-dollar defense contracts. The Russian military-industrial complex is a joke in comparison. Take a look at Rostec, for example, or any of the big state firms. They are slow, bloated, full of outdated hardware and overpriced nonsense. Their innovations are second-rate versions of what a Ukrainian farmer hacked together in his garage using power bank and duct tape. And while the military dreams of hypersonic death sticks and orbital laser systems, the real game is played on iPads and Androids. Real soldiers trust what they buy online more than what they are issued. That's not a sign of battlefield evolution. That's a complete collapse of institutional competence. The government still tries to wrap it in patriotism. They say support our domestic defense industry. But the soldiers do not care. They just want gear that works, because their lives depend on it. When there is a selection between a Russian-made drone, which is known to lose signal once you fly further than 200 meters away, or a Chinese drone that was donated to you by some volunteer organization, but you've been using the very same drone for the last 3 years already. Well, in this case the choice is very obvious. Nobody will risk their life to promote suboptimal Russian-made products. As it turns out, the future is not forged in state labs anymore. It is sold on Russian Amazon with overnight shipping. Let's take it further. What happens when all of this ends? When the last shell is fired and the soldiers drag their broken bodies home? What happens to the growth then? Simple. It vanishes. It becomes non-existent. The drone factories will shut down. The artillery plants will rust. The workforce will be laid off with no transferable skills, because no civilian industry needs people trained to build tank threads or fit explosives into shells, let alone hire soldiers who just barely can fit into society. You cannot retrofit an economy built for war into a peacetime paradise overnight. It does not work like that. And meanwhile, every sector that could have carried Russia forward, such as medicine, education, renewable energy, semiconductors, logistics, AI, even agriculture, will be gutted. They did not get the investment, they did not get the talent, they did not get the time. It was all sacrificed on the altar of urgent needs for a war with no end game. Wartime economies cannot be paused like a video game, they leave scars. A generation of kids grows up with teachers missing and textbooks 10 years old. Hospitals crumble while military clinics receive new equipment. Roads remain cracked while convoys get fresh tires. This is not a temporary sprint. It is a slow burn collapse masked by contracts and GDP data machinations. Even worse, you kill your future industries before they are even born. Think of all the brilliant minds that could have started companies or developed civilian products, but were instead thrown into the grinder. Think of the startups that will never exist because their founders were either drafted or died. You don't measure this loss in rubles, you measure it in futures stolen. But the question is always remains the same. Does Putin even care? Well, there you have it, guys. If you haven't done so already, please subscribe to my channel for more videos like this. If you wish to support my work and you want to see another additional chapter after every single episode, it will be uploaded on my Patreon. The link is down below. Thanks so much for watching. See you tomorrow.
We won't succumb to their tricks, the facade they try to sell. Their twisted words and feeble claims are resolved they cannot quell. We see through their lies, their feeble attempts to sway. We do not believe in ridiculous Russian propaganda.